My desire to feel really empowered by my body was absolutely the driving force behind my sex work. Putting myself in front of a camera was an opportunity to see all of myself and to feel good about what I was seeing. I'm really proud of the person that I am. I don't want to hide anything about who I am from my kid. I don't have all the answers yet about how I'm going to be honest and raw about my sexuality and my kink, but I know that I want to be raw and honest with those things with my kid.
This episode of What's Underneath is made possible with the support of Ergo Baby and Modi Body.
Stay tuned to the end of the episode to learn more about our partners and the special offers they have for you. So can you talk about what your style says about you?
I think that my style varies between kind of like this bubblegum, kind of princessy aesthetic. And then there's kind of the other side, which is more of the like country, Swedish, very vintage inspired. A lot of my like former sex work that I was doing and the content that I've created in and out of the sex work worlds have been more in that bubblegummy space. And then the side of me that was more country and more like clothes on was the side that lived off camera. And both are me, but I'm trending more towards this lately. I think just because I'm postpartum now and I'm like feeling a little different about my body than I used to. And I did not expect this. I fully was like ready to advocate for like being the person who is very pregnant and also doing porn or also doing really risque photo shoots and also potentially doing in-person sex work or any of those things. I've always been really comfortable being naked as a dicky bird on screen in any kind of situation. And always felt really trusting that, especially because I exist in a pretty much exclusively queer world, that my body would be really respected in its nakedness. But I definitely felt myself pull away from fetishizing my body because my kid was inside of it. I felt like I wanted to be more private with my body because there was this little kiddo inside of me that couldn't necessarily consent to being present in those situations.
What would you say are assumptions that people make about you based on how you look?
Something that has been on my mind about this whole interview process is that this is probably the most public venue in which it's possible for people in my like day job world to find out about my not day job world. It's not that I want to hide it, right? Like I'm really proud of the person that I am in all forms and I'm really proud of the content that I create, but I have in the past really made a point to kind of separate those two things for fear that someone who doesn't live in the particularly like queer, radical queer separatist world that I live in might look at my sex work or my Instagram and assume that I'm a less capable person or that I'm a less capable mother for some reason, when my hope is that people can maybe see my page, decide whether or not they want to interact with it, and if they don't, then like great, they can still interact with all the other parts of me. Motherhood is the catalyst for this because I don't want to hide anything about who I am from my kid. I don't have all the answers yet about how I'm going to be honest and raw about my sexuality and my kink, but I know that I want to be raw and honest with those things with my kid. And I want them also to not get the impression that my kink or that my dynamics with my partners or that my sex work or that my content or that any of that is bad. I think that it's fair to teach that it's taboo, but I don't want them to internalize the idea that that taboo is necessarily correct.
What is the biggest insecurity that you're working on overcoming?
Oh God, my body. I felt really sexy in my body 9 days out of 10 pre-pregnancy, but that 10th day was really brutal. My desire to feel really empowered by my body was absolutely the driving force behind my sex work. The word sex work is so broad. I would say content creation is maybe more the like broader umbrella term for what I do. I started the Princess of Kink Instagram in 2019, like right before the pandemic. I was looking for something that would make me feel more at home in my skin. I think when it first started, I hadn't been taking very good looks at myself. You know, I like have always been scared of mirrors, and that's a result of eating disorders in my past. Because when you look in a mirror, it's really easy to see one part of you, especially the parts of you that you are maybe less fond of or have had a harder time accepting. It's really easy to take little snapshots of yourself and look at only that. Putting myself in front of a camera allowed me to see my whole self and not like avoid looking at the rest of me, but also not like super hyper focus on one part of me. It was an opportunity to see all of myself and to feel good about what I was seeing. I'm not saying that my relationship with my body was perfect. It's certainly not, but it was a hell of a lot better. And I felt really good. And it's not that I don't feel good now, but I feel different. There's been a lot of changes in the last year, all because of pregnancy. I didn't feel like ashamed of the actual bump. Like I really was like enjoying kind of showing off the bump, partly because I was just so excited that I was having a kid, and partly because it was maybe the only time I've ever experienced my belly being a good thing. And then the postpartum world, it's such a huge shift in everything about your body. I am really trying to get comfortable with a fatter, more squishy version of myself, and I can't say I'm there yet, but I bet I will get there. I mean, I'm like 5 weeks postpartum, so I'm giving myself a little grace here. I would say that every fat high femme should have a service sub because we should not have to bend over our bellies to take off our own shoes. There's just no need for that.
So can you talk about what has been your biggest struggle?
So, I mean, I've always been dominant, right? That's like always just been a part of who I am. And so in relationships, that often showed up as me totally steamrolling over whoever I was in a relationship with. In the home life, in the bedroom, in everything. It was essentially me doing like non-consensual doming over everyone that I was in a relationship with. I wish I could say that there was like a day that I woke up and was like, I know, if I was a mommy dom, then all of a sudden I could like take all of these traits about myself that I know can kind of steamroll over other people who maybe are the less commanding person in the room, and then channel it into this really heavily consented to, negotiated version of that dynamic. But it wasn't something that I just like came to the realization of overnight. Kink started for me, I think, in a more formal way when my former partner, they very early into our relationship were like, hey, have you ever like wanted to tie somebody up? And I was like, haven't really thought about it, but now that you mention it, yeah. I went and bought every book on it that I could find. I started listening to podcasts. I just started like really immersing myself in like how I could give them what they wanted in that way. That just kind of like morphed into this really beautiful kinky dynamic. We could like fetishize and consensually come up with ways for that level of dominance that I kind of embody all the time to have like a time and a place. And to have that time and place be really celebrated, but also very contained. Once I realized that I could be dominant with somebody and have them, first of all, really like it and like want it and feel desirous of that, but also have it be like very explicitly consented to. I didn't feel shame around it, and I didn't feel concern that I was like hurting anybody. Here we go.
So how has your relationship to your sexuality shifted in pregnancy? Is there any vulnerability in that?
Yeah, there's so much vulnerability in that. My sexuality shifted pretty dramatically during pregnancy because I stopped being able to be penetrated. It was kind of like an identity crisis, which is hilarious. But I appreciate who I am as a bottom. I also appreciate who I am as a top. But
And is that different for you than being dominant?
yeah, totally. And in fact, I would say they're all like totally disparate things. My primary partnership with Jasper is one where they are a submissive top. I feel really powerful in a place of like dominant bottoming. And I know that there's a lot of us out there, but we maybe aren't as represented. So like not being able to bottom put me and Jasper into a hilarious little tailspin. And at the point when I got like really big, topping kind of became off the table for me too. Like I was like not able to really fuck in any way. For us to essentially stop having sex for like quite some time was it was really weird, and we had to like constantly remind each other like, hey, I'm still really attracted to you, hey, you're still really hot, you know, like still kind of affirming that in every way we could because we weren't really able to express it through sex for a little while there. So that felt like a little identity crisis, but ultimately I knew it was temporary. I knew that I would eventually get that power back.
So when do you feel the most vulnerable?
When I'm being criticized is when I feel the most vulnerable. When somebody tells me that I'm doing something wrong, even if they're not telling me I'm doing something wrong, if they're just saying like, suggesting another way, I immediately start to cry. I definitely appreciate feedback in the bedroom. I also really appreciate feedback about how I am as a dominant. And then when I hear it, sometimes I'm like, you know, like it's really hard. Yeah. Shame, embarrassment, like humiliated for having tried in the first place. In my rational mind, I'm like, oh, cool. Thank you for this feedback. Like really useful, like genuinely practical for me to know this and then do it differently next time. But then in my irrational mind, it's the exact opposite of like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm terrible at sex. Like I've never pleasured anyone before ever. You know, like your brain just goes to these wild places. And I'm like aware of that wild place and aware that it's not reality, but it's still there, and it's something that I have to work on.
Okay, so last question. Why in your body, in your skin, in your journey, why is it a good place to be?
The fact that I have a fairly polarizing lifestyle is exactly how I want it. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think that my body is a part of what's gotten me here, and I'm so grateful for that. Motherhood, oh God.
Go. Let it go.
Motherhood is the, best thing my body and I have done together. And we've done a lot of really cool things. I learned how to let go from being pregnant, and from motherhood, I think I will continue to learn how to let go. And I'm such a controlling person, and I've learned how to control that control and how to contain that control and how to harness it and put it towards useful outlets. And so now I get to embark on this really exciting process of totally submitting to motherhood. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really, really beautiful.
This episode of What's Underneath is made possible with the support of Ergo Baby and Modi Body. Ergo Baby is a company that's supporting your growing family through every step of the parenthood journey. What did you use to carry me when I was a baby?
I'd have to wrap you really tight in a blanket or somehow put you inside of a shirt. I would have loved to have had something like Ergo Baby's baby carrier.
Ergo Baby's newborn carrier, the Ergo Baby Embrace, is now available in soft air mesh. Soft, cool, and comfortable. It's the sweetest way to stay connected from the start.
Modi Body is a global leader in sustainable, reliable, leak-proof apparel.
This includes underwear, activewear, swimwear, maternity wear, and infant nappies. Modi Body's leak-proof products have been scientifically proven and tested to repel odor, absorb fluid, and are antimicrobial. Mom, remember the early days when you were going through menopause and how you would sweat through all of your clothes on set?
Yes, I remember it very vividly. I'd have to change all of my clothes. So it would have been amazing to have something like Modi Body's underwear and apparel so that I didn't have to worry about the sweating. It would just absorb it. We're so grateful to partner with Modi Body, a brand that prides themselves on keeping it real with real people, real bodies, and real stories. Use code STL15 for 15% off if you spend $80 or more at modibody.com. On your next Ergo Baby purchase, use code StyleLikeU15 for 15% off today.